Okay, everybody, welcome back to the Leadership Lens. Today we have a very spectacular guest on the show today, Vinod Rakshanami, Chief Customer Officer at Joveo, where he's led some of the most remarkable customer success turnarounds in recent memory. Done some really amazing things. He helped grow the company's flagship enterprise account by more than 4 times and built a CS organization that now owns accountability for the company's entire revenue base. Basically, what this guy is a master within customer success. He knows everything that there is to know about it. And today we're going to learn quite a bit about him because in my world, customer success is pretty obvious. It's a small business. My customers are happy. My candidates are happy. Everyone's kind of doing well. But when you get into some of these more enterprise businesses that are super large, they touch their clientele in a lot of different ways. There's a more vast customer experience that kind of comes into it. There's a lot of different areas in which these clients will interact with businesses. And Vinod here is a master within that. And so I know what customer success is in my own mind and what I believe that it is. But for those of us out there who are just making assumptions and don't really know for sure, can you just tell us a little bit about what customer success is within the functionality of a business and what the goals are of that function?
Thank you, Taylor. Master, I'm a distant dream from being a master. That's not my that's not my simplicity talking. Every year, every month, I learn something new. So I hope to be a master sometime soon. The last name I mispronounced that myself. It's Radhakrishnan. so let's get to this, right? Customer support, customer success. It's probably the most confusing part of what people understand of what when one is inward looking, one is external looking, right? Customer support, according to me, is in my simple terms. You ask, I do, right? You want something, I get that delivered to you. Now, customer success for me is principled around three things that I typically coach my team on. I focus this on three principles or three verticals, right? Listen ardently and focus, right? If you listen well, you're focusing on what is the key construct that needs to be built. Second is to kind of make sure to simplify that down to its T, right? When you're listening to a customer, a lot of noise comes through. You need to pick the music out of that. Simplify it to the T. Third, and the biggest principle of customer success is execute, execute, execute. If all these first two steps becomes, in vain if the execution part does not come through. While the principles are aligned, I find customer success as part of the customer's organization, not the startup or Fortune 100 part of the organization. Customer success always sits in the customer side of the house. One needs to behave, pretend. I use the word pretend because you're always looking at your side of the fence too, right? You have to behave like the customer and become the proponent of the customer inside the house. So I keep it as simple as that. One is proactive and the other one is reactive. You identify problems before they actually happen. The other one is happened, you have to solve for it.
Yeah. So I would have a lot of leaders that I talk to basically say, customer experience and satisfaction is all of our job. Everyone in the company is responsible for the customers being happy, which I think that there's a lot of truth to that, especially
Yeah.
if that's kind of the culture within your business. And so when it comes to a function within a business that is surrounded by customer success and customer appreciation, whatever the case may be, is that a does that act in a learning and development type of a scenario where you're training other personnel? Does it act in a process oriented manner where you are constantly asking different clients for feedback and then removing roadblocks or areas of the processes that maybe give them pause or frustration? Like, how do you go about one, identifying the areas that need to be looked at? And then two, how do you go about remediating whatever those issues might be?
Thank you, Taylor. It's a pretty broad question, right? It completely depends upon the stage of the organization that I am at, right?
Mm-hmm.
So for me to ascertain which path to go, I typically ascertain that by product maturity first, right? When a customer support organization, I'll come to the larger organization in a bit, but first and
Mm-hmm.
foremost is where is the team spending time on? If the product maturity is not at a place where your maximum occupancy is constantly to fix problems that customers experiencing,
Mm-hmm.
your scale is out of the question, right? So the first thing that I do as soon as I come into an organization, and I would, you know, propose that this be a behavior for a customer success leader, is to solve for the product maturity. Go back into every single survey, every customer call. Today with AI, you can simplify it. You can get analytics out at a snap of your finger, right? Go into every analytic that has come and look for product maturity statements. Look for where we stand as a product. Once we remove the occupancy spent on troubleshooting, firefighting, then comes the growth, right? Uh,
Mm-hmm.
that I treat as first phase. And then if I look at the larger organization, is everybody aligned to the existing customer base? Now, typically, in any startup, and if you look at me, my career has in the last 10 years has been in the startup space. Almost 80% of your revenue belongs to the existing customers, right? Brutally prioritize that. If there are no existing practices to ensure that the existing customers are not brutally prioritized as against a product roadmap, then your role becomes building that partnership. Your role becomes as influencing product leaders, CTOs of the organization. CEOs are always founder-based mentality is to always solve for the customers, but you'll always find the CEOs completely on board with prioritizing the existing customers first, but bringing the CTOs and product along. And if there's an ecosystem, like I am currently in an HR tech space, there is supply, there is a vendor base that we need to kind of work with as well. Bring them all together, and this needs to happen in the first quarter when we need to, which is product maturity and bringing the team together to brutally prioritize our existing customers becomes a flavor of the quarter, if you want to call it in ice cream language.
Mm-hmm. Very, very good. Well, one of the things that I try to focus on as much as I can, and it's something that we've talked about a little bit in the past, but is essentially developing personnel, developing people. And sometimes I'll kind of ask a dual question here. I know I'm asking you kind of
Sure.
broadways one, so I apologize for that. But when you
No.
talk about developing direct reports, that's
Mm-hmm.
somewhat straightforward. You
Yep.
interact with this person on a regular basis. You see the work that they're putting out. You're giving them to dos and staying on top of them. There's a lot of insight and a lot of ability to see what's going on in that person's day to day and how quickly they're developing because you're with them on a day to day basis. Now, one of the other areas where I like to hopefully find confidence in candidates and what I believe that they can bring to the table is also influencing colleagues,
Mm.
influencing up within the organization, and pointing out areas that their boss or their other leaders can kind of grow a little bit, if you will, but doing that in a very tactful and respectful manner, obviously, as you should across the
Yeah.
board. But the reason I bring this up is because you just brought something up about really cross functionally across all leadership. This is not a customer success thing, and we're just in our own little bucket here. We're
Yeah.
going
Yeah.
across all the functions of the business, and we're looking at everything across the board to ensure that everyone is in alignment and that we're all very open about this and that we're all rowing in the same direction. So, you in your world, obviously, you have direct reports and people that focus in on you. But when you get into these leadership meetings where there are issues, for lack of a better term, being identified within someone else's function entirely. Call it product. That was one of the ones that you kind of brought to the table there in your description. If there is an issue, let's call it with product, and that needs to be addressed, and that's something that is giving pause to the clientele. Do you feel responsibility for training up that person and how to fix that problem in any way? Do you feel some sort of responsibility for that person's success within their own function? Because maybe you are the one bringing it to the table because you're doing that deep dive and you're going through the data and you're the one really looking for these issues. So, do you take responsibility for that, even though it might be in their bucket? If you were the one to bring it to the table and maybe you're the one that's coming up with the alleviation towards that and the fix to that problem?
Great question, Taylor. I I probably want to zoom out on this particular question of yours, right? When I look at building partnerships, maybe with your direct team as well as the extended organization, I think I look at it from the first perspective, which is human principles, right? We are attuned to build a wall when somebody is trying to influence you to go a different direction than what you have actually envisioned a path on, right? Um, so I think the foremost is to build that relationship, and you need to do this at a very short time and at a great pace. Now there is no one size fits all when it comes to human relationship. I think it's fundamental is to try and build trust. Fundamental is to kind of build that we are in together for solving a common problem, which will yield better results for both of us, right? So that's a zoomed out view. Um, two pieces to this, right? Um, Developing your team or building a wider partnership where you are going for the common goal. There are two parts. One is feedback, and second is coaching, right? Feedback and coaching are not the same. Feedback is like GPS, right? Feedback is about where are we currently, where do we need to go, what's the ideal path to kind of get to, right? It is quick, it is defined by first-hand information, it is defined by what you have observed, not hearsay, right? And that becomes constructive, and that becomes an area that people will work with you. Uh, and to kind of balance that with not being the one who's always giving you negative feedback, right? And then there's that wall comes up again, right? Coaching is intentional. Coaching is deliberate. Coaching needs to provide time for the receiver to do his own assessment, and the moment it is together. There is one beautiful thing that I learned from one of the podcasts that Jeff Bezos said in a meeting. When you're coming into, if it's a group meeting or one-on-one meeting, take the time to spend the first 15 minutes in reading the document of what are we here for,
Hmm.
right? And I find that very powerful, irrespective whether you've done your pre reads, you've done your pre research. That gives you enough time to settle in the new environment, absorb the energies that are there, and then you become very, very, you know, deliberate in terms of going after the action. In that principle, that I'm probably elongating this a bit.
All right.
Self-assessment is the key, right? Self-assessment. We need as a leader needs to be a coach, or leader is a coach. Needs is a wrong word there. We need to bring self-assessments from the people and then navigate like a GPS to lead them to the direction that you intended this meeting to have, provided the context is set right, the documentation is appropriate for you to have a very functional conversation. If the self-assessment is right, the idea is that person's, not yours. If
Mm.
the self-assessment is right, the outcome will be completely owned, not to be driven by you as a leader, right? So that's I think at a zoomed out view, that's how I look at it. But I'm happy to kind of dive deeper if you
Mhm.
would like to.
Well, no, I think I think that that works. And you started off in hospitality within your career, and that seems like a very natural place for a customer success person to kind of start off in. Can you tell me about how that time in hospitality early on in your career affected maybe the way that you think about customers, the way that you think about providing service or whatever the case might look like, because it feels to me like a good place to start. But you tell me what kind of that brought to the table for you.
It delights me that you see it that way. Not many people see it that way, right? People look at hospitality as a stopgap career choice while they're building something new.
Mm,
My deliberate choice was hospitality. And I
okay.
probably would have, when I started that career, I probably would have imagined myself retiring in that space too, because I loved hospitality so much. I think one thing that hospitality builds with you is being perceptive, is about anticipatory service, right? I come from that era of hospitality where the power of the people was much, much more than what today it
Mm,
exists. If you go into a restaurant today, it could be a 100-seater restaurant. You probably would find in a specialty restaurant, you know, 10 servers, right? I worked in a time frame when there were probably 15, probably 20,
mm,
right? Attention to detail, to observe from a distance, is the glass being refilled before even he wants the glass to be refilled, right?
mhm,
Have you
mhm,
anticipating that service by looking at it? Is the water always consistently there? Yeah, it's simple things that matter, right?
right, right.
It's not about selling. It was always my education in the hospitality was also about perceiving the need, and the practice that was given to us during our industrial training was also about that. So I think that becomes an instrumental space for you to build your career, because if your EQ is built around that, the rest is but natural to be built on top of that. That becomes a foundation that
Mhm,
helps with your people relationships, that helps with your coaching abilities, that helps with so many other areas. When it comes to customer success, hospitality becomes your nature, and people always, we are people, right? So
mhm.
that's that's I find that interesting that you see it that way. No, nobody has
Well,
actually told me that.
that's what the hospitality industry is all about. The moment the person walks through the door, you've kind of made the sale. Now it's about keeping the customer. And so
Yeah,
your opportunity to lose customers is much greater than it is to gain a whole lot more. I mean, foot traffic and word of mouth and whatnot are going to get people to walk through the door, but at the end of the day, hospitality is not about acquiring one-time customers. It's
my
about
God,
repeat
yes.
business. Always.
And
That's really what it is. So they're always into it. Well, you mentioned going through the data, deciphering areas of opportunity, which we'll call it that as opposed to issues. And how, you can get a lot of this information through AI pretty easily. And I've been on Claude all morning, talking back and forth with it, having it help me with my CRM and everything else. And you've taken some official AI driven classes, actually. I'm seeing
yeah,
those more and more these days, but they're still pretty small. There's not a whole lot of people that have done it. And one of them was pretty recent here, actually, AI driven marketing strategy. I'm wondering if you can just talk to me about your continued learning. You can just talk to us about the classes you've taken with AI or outside of it that have come a little bit, later in your career and whatnot, because not everybody goes back to school, if you will. And I've just been trying to learn AI just by playing with it effectively. I haven't taken any classes or anything. So, what value have you gained from those things? What would you recommend to people who are considering it?
Taylor, I think you said it the best way that is possible. By playing with it, you learn faster, right?
Mm,
Uh,
mhm,
call it a delayed adopter, which forced me into going back to the class, going back to school,
mm,
and I think it was a forced choice for me rather than an intuition to kind of go and do this, because I always observed a pattern. Every startup that I went to, data was in silos. It was so disparate to kind of,
mm,
and so defragmented that you needed to kind of bring all this to make sense out of it. And the first time that I used AI was in my current role a couple of years back, and that's also driven by how future forward that we were from a product perspective, but internally we were not necessarily adopting AI for our own simplification. So the first time I went for this course was almost this year, but that's after doing what you are doing right now. So played with it, broke it, rebuilt it, uh, had so many failure moments, and then I understood what played well for what scenario. Right, there are so many tools that are available. So my first approach to this was going to Harvard. I mean, obviously, a top league school. Um, and that this was around strategy for business leaders, right? As to how AI can help influence. And it was not about the questions that you can just ask. That was what AI would do. And then the depth of AI, the journey of AI, that helps kind of navigate you through the process of how AI has kind of come through. What
Mm,
we think is that AI was existent for the last 5 years, but this has been existent for probably 50 plus
right.
years, right from yesteryears of machine learning and repeat um, solving for the repeat problems. That was my stepping stone into school, but that kind of invigorated everything that I wanted to learn. Second was, it was outside my domain, right? I it was while it was about marketing strategy, there was one element that kind of piqued my interest, and that was around CLV, which is the customer lifetime value, and how AI can influence that. How how simplified the approach was when you look at customer lifetime value. When how simplified the approach was when you're looking at the customer acquisition cost, retention cost, support costs, and then remeasuring your CLV from through an AI lens. So that for me, the biggest one was that, and
Mm,
how retaining a customer was you know much more beneficial. At times, we always weed out the long tail, thinking that this is not worth retaining. It's probably much more cost. As long as you work with your product and engineering folks to make that simplified and make that uh, you know, self-driven for customer success to support, we can continue that because the CLB kind of takes care of where the end needs to be. So I think that was a progression. Call
mhm,
it an delayed adopter syndrome, and then being, you know, going and adopting every single thing that was there, and trying to solve things by yourself, and then equipping your learning through varied. And I'm not stopping here.
yeah.
This next second stage was much more interesting than it was. So I would recommend both Harvard and Columbia. Harvard is a shorter course. Colombia, you probably need to spare a week for yourself to invest time in. I would recommend both to every business leader, not limited uh, to people in the marketing. I saw that it was that audience were from the marketing
Mhm.
space, but customer success can gain from that too.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you keep saying late adopter, and I'm kind of laughing to myself because everyone that I talk to thinks that they're late. Unless you were using AI 12 months ago, then you're not, then that was like when you were supposed to start using it. But I mean, I would bet the majority of my friends still aren't really using it. And if they are, it's like kind of Google-esque asking questions.
Yeah.
So I think that for me, I went from a novice to above 98, 99% of the world in 3 weeks because I forced
Hmm.
myself to use it every day. I've got all my
Yeah.
connectors in it. I'm using, like I said, I'm using it to update my CRM and do some pretty impressive things within my business. But no, everybody thinks that they're late to the game on this one, and it's just a matter of getting going. So what do you like to use? What's your favorite tool today?
I use Claude quite a bit because that kind of integrates well with every bring in Snowflake, bring in a
Mhm.
CRM, bring in Salesforce, and then bring in insights and recommendations becomes a lot more easier. We adopted you know a tool called Avoma, which is a call recording software. Right, every customer call gets recorded, like the one that you see here. Um, I found that the way AI was integrated with them, which was a lot more powerful than how I could bring it into my, a customer insights tool that was there. You could ask the questions in the fashion that you wanted to. Typically, it gives you a transcript. Typically, any recording software gives you, summary, details, timelines.
Mhm.
The tool that we adopted could coach you, that review my last 10 calls and help me with what do I need to do differently to be much more successful as a customer success manager. And it would
Mhm.
give me thorough insights. And you can you know double question it. You can question it to the extent where it almost reaches the state of interrogation, but it kind of provides you thorough, detailed analysis. You need to kind of beware of its bias, as a lot of times that it goes, but you need to protect it with the kind of prompting that you need to use. So Claude is the core of things that I use, but when my search becomes broader, I tend to use Gemini. In the software, in the technical part of the world, I think Claude works when you're looking at personas, when you're looking at how do I, when you see a particular new customer that is coming, who's replaced an existing, and you want to do a little bit of analysis, and I see Gemini do a much better job of that. So
Mm,
I would say these two areas have kind of do that. And my engineering team has kind of helped build agentic AIs for us as well. So kind of custom developed within house to
mm.
to kind of make that much more powerful.
Wow, it's great. Yeah, it's very exciting stuff. I find it difficult to talk to anyone. Uh, I I've probably done 25 of these now, and I think in every single one AI has been brought up, except maybe two. It's just too exciting, and it's too new, and it's too impactful to not really kind of bring up from one reason to another, and it ends up just finding its way into the conversation,
Yeah,
even if you don't really invite it. It just kind of
yeah.
finds its way to get in there because in one way or another, it's something new and exciting that you're utilizing on a regular basis. So it's
No,
you know,
so true. Now, when I say I'm a delayed adopter, this is exactly what I'm saying. That I'm not. I mean, when I look at a peer, they're probably on Grok, they're probably on ChatGPT, they're probably on every other thing that I have not used yet. I found my comfort zone. I'm comfortable in that.
mhm,
Now I'm forcing myself to go and look at others as, okay,
yeah,
how different? What is it this going to bring to me?
right,
So
yeah,
I think each time one comes across a problem, it forces you to kind of go and explore
hmm
one more thing.
hmm And I just started using Copilot. I
Oh,
just
lovely. Yep.
now I've got Claude, and it'll pop up on when I'm making a Word document, it'll pop
Yeah.
up and it sees me like redo a sentence a couple times and it highlights it and it says, "Do you want help like writing this sentence?" I'm like, "Yeah, I do. It's amazing. How did you know?" And then it helps me and it's great. I love it. No, it's
Yeah.
just it's on every application I use now. Now I have it on Chrome where I just have to because this one was so fun the other day when I used it and we're getting off topic. We'll wrap up here in a minute, but I
Sure.
had a LinkedIn conversation with a guy who I knew was
Hmm.
someone that I wanted to follow up with, and I knew somebody I was going to have a call with in the near future. Now, typically, I would take that information, I would go into HubSpot, I would make a contact, I'd put first name, last name, whatever, all this stuff, blah, blah, blah. I'd copy and paste the LinkedIn message into it, blah, 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 and then do a follow up for a week or two from them. And I pulled up my sidebar on Claude and I said, take this conversation and make a contact card in HubSpot, then copy and paste this conversation and log it as a LinkedIn conversation between us and mark a to do item or a task rather for me to follow up with him in a week. And it just went around my screen, built the contact thing, and it took me 10 seconds to tell it what to do,
Yeah.
but typically that would have taken me 3 or 4 minutes. So nothing crazy, but I'm literally watching it move around on my screen and do what I'm asking it to do. It blew my mind. I'm like, I'm never making a contact card ever again in the rest of my life because I'm just going to tell it to do it for me. Why not? It's like, it's
Yeah.
awesome. So
Absolutely.
anywho,
Absolutely.
it's good stuff. It's good stuff. Well, I appreciate you very much for coming on the show here today. Wonderful conversation. I think that people probably learned a lot from this. Thank you so much for your expertise, your opinions, for being very open and honest with everything that was asked of you today. And I think it'd be fun to have you back on the show in a year or two, and we can kind of catch up a little bit and see what else is new in your world.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the areas in which we should park for another conversation is the scale, and typically customer success leaders get hired for scale.
Mm,
I think that's a core area that that people often struggle or bring different principles to it. I've had success in the last few years in terms of scaling startups, especially. I think that would be an interesting area to kind of have a conversation on. This has been fantastic, Taylor, and it naturally flowed. So I'm glad to have been here, and thank you for having me.
thank you so much. Well, we'll get you back on and we can talk through that a little bit more. So Appreciate your time very much. I hope you have a great rest of your day. Enjoy your Airbnb wherever you might be today. And we'll talk to you soon. Thank you so much.